So in my previous Homelab themed video, we built a 42U rack system that's loaded with everything ranging from a DIY NAS system that I built years ago to my Unify or my Ubiquity home network system and home security, as well as even media systems like a Sonos amp. So today's video, we're going to be taking that Homelab setup up to the next level. We're going to be adding a whole bunch of different things to it. We're going to be expanding a lot of the features that it already has. We got Ty here again, and we're going to crush this one again. As always, if you guys want to check out his channel, because this is his forte, he focuses fully on smart home tech, home network, Wi-Fi, all of that stuff. So if you want to learn more about that stuff and really get in depth into it, you should definitely check out his channel. We started off by tackling all the outdoor installs while there was still plenty of daylight left. First up was the G4 Doorbell Pro PoE kit. It comes with a single doorbell camera and chime, both powered and connected through one Ethernet cable. And honestly, this keeps things really nice and clean. The doorbell itself looks really sleek and modern, and even has a second camera below that's perfect for keeping an eye on package deliveries. The small chime it comes with also has this really nice low profile round design, definitely one of the better looking ones that I've ever seen. I decided to mount this one at the back of the house, right next to the sliding door that leads out of the basement. I spent a lot of time down there, so having a doorbell and chime system for both the main level and the walkout basement just made a lot of sense. When I was building out the basement, I made sure to run a dedicated Cat6e cable just for this setup so I could power and connect it over a single line. I did the same thing at the front door, although that one was trickier since the walls were already finished when we moved in. The front doorbell has been rock solid using PoE, so I wanted to keep things consistent for this second one. Once I terminated the Ethernet cable, I mounted the base plate, plugged it in, and locked the camera in place. It powered on right away, showing the little startup screen, which is always a great sign. For the chime, I had another Cat6e line already run to the top section of one of the basement walls. To install that, I just used the included template to cut out a circle in the drywall, made sure the hole wasn't too big, and then popped the chime in. It powered on immediately after connecting. After that, I jumped into the Unify Protect app, adopted both devices, and everything came online without any issues. With that done, it was time to move on to the security cameras next. Now, prior to this, I already had two Unify G4 Pro cameras installed at the front and the back of the house, but decided it was time to upgrade to the new AI Pro models. The first thing that stood out to me right away was the color. The G4 Pros only came in white, but the AI Pro comes in both black and white. I went with black since, well, it blends in way better with the dark soffit on the house and just looks cleaner overall. Just like the G4 Pro, the AI Pro connects over a single Ethernet cable, works both indoors and outdoors, and records in full 4K. The big upgrade though is the enhanced AI detection, which I was really excited to check out. We grabbed a ladder and Ty jumped right up there to start replacing the first camera. The installation was almost identical to the G4 Pro, well, except the mounting system on the AI Pro is a lot more refined. The tightening mechanism is much smoother and way easier to work with. Also, Ty has mounted enough cameras at this point that it only took him a few minutes to get it done. Once it was in place, I hopped into the Unify Protect app, adapted the camera, and made sure the angle was dialed in to cover the entire backyard. Next, we moved the ladder to the front of the house to replace the second one. Now, that install was just as quick. We mounted, connected, and adjusted for full coverage of the driveway and the front entryway. We went inside and moved on to upgrading the access points next. The goal here was to bring the entire house up to Wi-Fi 7 and really push my network speed and reliability to the next level. Up until now, I'd been running two Wi-Fi 6 in-wall APs and a Wi-Fi 6 long-range ceiling mount. That setup had been great for a very long time, especially since most of my devices were still Wi-Fi 6 back then. But now I've got a lot more Wi-Fi 7 devices that I use on a day-to-day basis, so it was really time for an upgrade. I decided to swap out the older U6 in-wall APs for the new U7 Pro in-wall models. They have a really similar design, but the new ones are a bit larger and of course support Wi-Fi 7. The one trade-off though is that Unify removed the 3 Ethernet ports that used to be built into the U6s. Honestly though, I wish they'd kept them because that made the older models super versatile. One solid improvement though is that the U7 Pro uses 2.5 GPoE ports instead of 1G like the older U6. That higher bandwidth makes a huge difference when you're trying to get the most out of Wi-Fi 7. Installing these in-wall APs is honestly pretty straightforward. It's basically replacing one of those built-in Ethernet ports you might already have around the house with an access point. I started by replacing the first U6 located in the room on the main floor. I popped off the old AP, swapped out the mounting plates, connected the Ethernet cable, and snapped the new U7 Pro in place. Once it was powered on, I adopted it into the Unify app and made sure everything was working correctly. Next, we moved upstairs to the second floor where all the bedrooms are located. Ty handled that install while I set up the software side. He had the second U7 mounted and running within minutes, and I added it into the app as soon as it came online. The final access point we installed was the E7, which replaced my old Wi-Fi 6 long-range ceiling mounts in the basement studio. Now that space is wide open, so I like keeping the setup clean with the ceiling mounted AP. I'd already run a dedicated Cat6 heat line for this, but I didn't anticipate needing two cables. And that's because the E7 actually comes with two ports, a 10G uplink and a secondary 1G for redundancy. I only connected the 10G port since I never ran a second cable, but honestly, that's more than enough for a small home setup like mine. The redundant port is really useful for larger enterprise environments. The 10G uplink though is a massive upgrade. It lets the E7 take full advantage of faster switches, which is great for future proofing. Once it was up, I adopted it into the app and everything connected perfectly. One thing I immediately noticed though and really liked was the LED ring around the E7. You can customize the color or even turn it off entirely from within the UniFi app, which is a nice little touch for anyone who prefers a cleaner look. Next up, we moved over to the mechanical room to start reorganizing the server rack, the exciting part of the whole process. The plan was simple: upgrade some components, add a few new ones, and take the whole setup to the next level. We started by backing up the most recent settings from my main switch, then powered it down and disconnected everything. I'd been meaning to clean up the rack layout for a while because a lot of devices weren't in the most optimal spots and I wanted it to look cleaner overall. We began by moving one of the 24-port patch panels down a bit to leave a 1U gap between both panels. We also stripped out a few of the trays since we'd previously mismatched some by placing heavier gear on smaller shelves. Once everything was cleared off, it was time to rebuild the rack from the ground up, starting with power. In the old setup, I was using a UniFi Power Distribution Pro, which honestly worked great, but I was about to add more power-hungry devices, so I swapped it for the high-density power supply, also from UniFi. It not only has way more outlets, but also mounts vertically, meaning it doesn't take up any horizontal rack space like the Power Distribution Pro did. That alone frees up 2U for other equipment, which to me was a big win. It comes with 24 remotely resettable outlets and 4 USB-C ports, which is more than enough for my setup. What I didn't expect though was the 30 amp plug it uses, and of course, I didn't have a matching outlet for that. That left me with two options: pick up a 30 amp to 50 amp step-down adapter, or run a new dedicated 30 amp circuit. I decided to go with both options. Ordered the supplies for the new circuit, but grabbed a temporary adapter so I could keep building in the meantime. Once the power supply was mounted to one of the rear posts, I moved back to the front to start adding devices. First, I mounted my AV receiver onto a sturdier tray that could handle its weight. Then brought in the new Zima Q Pro, which I'm using to replace my old NAS. This thing is much more compact and purpose-built for NAS setups. It runs on Zima OS, which feels lighter and much more user-friendly than on RAID, and also supports up to 164 terabytes of total storage across 6 HDD bays and a 4-slot SSD bay. It comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM, expandable up to 64 gigabytes, and runs on Intel's 12th Gen i5 processor. It doesn't have a dedicated GPU though, but supports low-profile ones if ever the need arises. For connectivity, it's got 10G and 2.5G Ethernet ports plus Thunderbolt 4, which is awesome for direct transfers. My old NAS worked perfectly fine, but I wanted something smaller and more integrated. I'll actually dive deeper into this in an upcoming NAS upgrade video, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so before we continue, I want to quickly show you guys a super affordable way to level up your home theater experience and a really smart pickup for anyone who stores a lot of media like myself. Now, this is the Ugreen NAS DH2300, and the best way to explain it is it's basically your own private cloud. Instead of paying crazy monthly fees for cloud storage or worrying about who has access to what, this lets you store everything locally, safely, and for a fraction of the long-term cost. Now, with support for up to 60 terabytes, you can store tens of thousands of movies, millions of photos, and entire project folders without ever running out of space. Setup is simple, and all you have to do is slide in the drives, tap to log in using NFC for quick linking, and then follow the guided steps to get it all up and running. Now, the biggest thing for home theater enthusiasts out there is the video center. It can store and organize movies, shows, and recordings and stream them to TVs, laptop phones, or even tablets, anywhere, anytime. It handles 4K playback, subtitles, remote access, all of it. It also has an AI album assistant which automatically organizes your photos by people, places, animals, and even finds duplicates so you can clean things up fast. And of course, for anyone who cares about privacy or has important files, this thing supports RAID redundancy, meaning your data stays safe even if one drive fails. So if you're building a home theater setup, need somewhere reliable to store your videos, or you just want to stop paying for overpriced cloud plans, definitely check this guy out right here. Use the link in the description below to grab 20% off during Black Friday from November 20th to December 1st. Next, we mounted a 1U UPS right above the NAS for protection of all the devices on the rack, and then moved on to the amps. I used to run a Sonos amp, but this time I wanted everything to work within my UniFi ecosystem. So I picked up a pair of UniFi Power Amps, both in black to match the rack. They're about the same size as the Sonos amp with rounded edges, a volume knob, and a small touchscreen display. Each one has HDMI eARC and 2 gigabit Ethernet ports for daisy chaining. I mounted them on a half tray above the receiver, leaving a 1U gap between the two. One powers my 4 studio speakers and the other handles my 2 backyard speakers. That gives me multi-zone control so I can use either set independently. The next thing we did was shift the pullouts tray up a few spots and then added another half tray above it for my digital PS5. Before adding more gear, we moved to the top of the rack to reinstall the 48-port PoE ether lighting switch first, placing it neatly between the patch panels for easier cable routing. At this point, it was time to bring in the UniFi Dream Machine Pro Max. This is a big step up from the original Dream Machine Pro. It comes with a 2.5G WAN port instead of 1G, which finally lets me take full advantage of my 1.5G internet plan. It also has dual HDD bays for NVR footage and a built-in 128GB SSD for faster overall system performance. We mounted it below the second patch panel, installed a 10TB drive in one of the bays, and left the second empty for future redundancy. Even with the single drive, I can store roughly 60 days of security footage from all of my cameras. Below that, we added another 1U tray for all my smart home hubs, followed by one more tray lower down for the mini PC, and then the printer on a sliding tray for easy access. This time, instead of using SFP Plus adapters, I connected the Dream Machine Pro Max to the 48-port switch with a 1 to 25G direct attached uplink cable. It auto-optimizes link speeds and gave me a 10G connection between both devices right away. Due to the shape of my internet router, I decided to move that off the rack and save some vertical space by moving it over to the other side of the room. I ran a dedicated Cat6e line over for that and then powered everything on temporarily to test. For the first time ever, I was hitting over 1 gig speeds for my internet, which was really cool to see. After restoring my backup configuration, I realized I still needed 10G and 2.5G PoE++ ports in order to power the new Wi-Fi 7 access points that I'd installed. And the 48-port switch on the rack just didn't have them. So I added the Pro HD 24 PoE switch, which comes with 2 10G PoE++ ports, 22 2.5G PoE++ ports, and 4 10G SFP Plus ports. It's essentially a beast and basically future-proofed my entire setup. To make room, we shifted the network section slightly, moving the 48-port switch down and placing the new Pro HD 24 PoE between the patch panels. All 3 switches were linked together using auto uplink cables for clean, optimized connections. Finally, I added the new switch to the UniFi app and made sure all the ports were working as expected. I decided to add a tiered storage rack on the opposite wall for extra items and routed all the cables that I needed for that before placing it. I brought in the internet router next and placed that on the second shelf alongside a small label printer that I use for my business quite often. Once my 30 amp to 15 amp converter arrived, I used it to temporarily power the rack until the dedicated 30 amp circuit was ready. For monitoring and quick troubleshooting, I mounted a 17-inch portable display on the wall using a low-profile VESA mount. I positioned it near an outlet for a clean look, connected HDMI and power, and then placed my OSCE tool bench right underneath for storage and so I can place a keyboard and mouse. I also installed the wall cabinet for my power tools with Hannah's help. We used anchors where there weren't studs, mounted it securely, added the inner tray and lockable door, and even set up a charging station inside. The cabinet has tiered storage inside and space at the top and bottom for different tools. Right below it, I stored my Dreamy Wet and Dry vacuum. It's loud when in mop drying mode, but since I soundproofed this room during the basement build, it's really not an issue in here. With almost everything in place, it was time for more cable management and reorganization. We moved the Dream Machine Pro Max to a more central position between the 2 switches. The final order from top to bottom went 24-port patch panel, Pro HD 24 PoE switch, a 1U gap, the Dream Machine Pro Max, another gap, the 48-port switch, then the second patch panel. We even added a third patch panel just for the visual balance and covered the unused ports for a clean, finished look. Between the Pro HD switch and the Dream Machine Pro, we added a blank panel to finish it off for a clean appearance. I also picked up covers for the 24 unused ports on the 48-port switch and closed them off properly to prevent dust and debris from going in. I completely forgot I wouldn't be using the 8 ports on the Dream Machine and forgot to pick up covers for those, so I left them as is for the time being. We swapped out the old cage nuts for rack studs, which make it so much easier to move trays and gear around. A huge upgrade for future adjustments. I got as much of them replaced as I could, only having to leave out the pull-out tray and heavy-duty rails since, sadly, those weren't designed to work with rack studs. Since I've been really impressed with UniFi's reliability on the camera side, I decided to try their all-in-one sensors as well. These are battery-powered and can detect motion, light, temperature, and humidity. I got the 3-pack, which also comes with one water sensor adapter that transforms one of the sensors into a leak detector when placed into the unit. To keep everything connected smoothly, I added something called a Super Link Gateway, which basically acts as a low-range, low-latency bridge for all the sensors. I mounted it high up on the main floor right in the center of the house for even coverage. Like most UniFi gear, it's powered via PoE, so I had already run a Cat6e cable there in advance. Once it was online, I adapted it into the UniFi app and started placing the sensors around the house. The first one went on the mechanical room door to track open and close status while also monitoring temperature and humidity. I stuck one part to the door and the other to the frame, adapted it into the app, and disabled the extra features to help extend battery life. I converted the second sensor into a leak detector by placing it inside the adapter housing and then set it next to my hot water tank and water softener. Finally, I configured it in the app as a leak-only sensor. The third one I kept aside for later since I honestly haven't decided on its final spot yet. Once everything was connected to SuperLink, all the readings looked fantastic. Everything was responsive and working exactly how I expected. The last step was finally setting up the power amps. Unlike most UniFi products, these connect through a separate app called UniFi Play. It's basically their version of a media hub, kind of like the Sonos app. I downloaded it, added both amps, and it immediately gave me granular control over each of the amps. From there, I could tweak volume levels, adjust EQ settings, and fine-tune how the audio came through the connected speakers. The amps are Dolby Atmos compatible and also work with major smart home platforms, including Apple HomeKit, which is a nice bonus. Once everything was paired, I finished off the front of the rack by closing the 2U gap between the amps and the receiver with a matching blank panel. It's a small touch, but honestly, it really ties the entire rack together visually. By this point, all the parts I needed to run the dedicated 30 amp circuit for the rack had finally arrived, so of course I got right into it. The nice thing here is the mechanical room isn't fully finished, so running the wire from the electrical panel over to the spot behind the rack was pretty straightforward. The process is almost identical to installing or replacing a regular 15 amp outlet, something that I've done plenty of times before, so it felt quite familiar. The only annoying part was dealing with the insulation inside the walls. I had to shift and tuck it around to make sure the wire was routed cleanly and safely, which definitely wasn't fun, but I made it work. Once everything was in place, I had an electrician handle the final connection inside the main electrical panel to tie in the new 30 amp circuit properly. With that done, it was finally time to add the last piece to complete my upgraded rack setup. Before bringing in the new UPS, we decided to move the NAS up by 3 rack spaces to make room for it. This thing is seriously heavy, a whole 30 amp UPS, and I needed it to be fully compatible with both the new power supply and the dedicated 30 amp circuit I just installed. It definitely wasn't a cheap purchase, but when it comes to everything I've got running in my server rack, I don't take any chances. Having proper backup power is non-negotiable, especially in case of an unexpected power outage. The UPS came with its own mounting bracket, so we installed those first, then carefully slid the unit into place. After that, we attached the faceplate and covered the 1U gap above it to allow for better airflow and a cleaner look overall. Once it was mounted, we switched the power supply plug over to the 30 amp ports on the UPS, then connected the UPS directly into the dedicated circuit. We tested everything right after installation to make sure it was functioning correctly, checking both the load levels and available runtime. The UPS also supports battery expansion, but for my setup, I won't be needing that. The included battery gives me more than enough time to safely power down all of my devices if power ever goes out. So with everything said and done, this is the upgraded Homelab setup right here. So the entire space has seen a revamp. I've added a bunch of new things and taken out some useless items that weren't doing very much. Now, To finalize things, what I did was add an Xbox above my PS5 here so I can have kind of a dual console setup, something to allow me to access my Xbox library and Game Pass, as well as PlayStation down there. I've also got my Apple TV. I put it right back in there, as well as something called a Super Box. Now, what it does is allow you to stream all of your movies, TV shows, and whatnot without the added cost of, paying for subscriptions. So it comes with the box. Everything is fully loaded on it. I'm not really gonna get into it in this video, but if you wanna find out more about it, make sure to check out the link that I've got down in the description. It's gonna be amongst the featured items down there, as well as everything else that I've got on my rack. Big shout out to Unify for sending out some of these items for me to install or add to my setup right here. We've got our Unify setup at the top. Then we've got a tray here for all of our media. Below that, we've got the pull-out tray for the printer, and under that, we've got the console, so Xbox, then PS5. Then I've got my double amp setup, my power amps, backyard, and studio. Then the AVR. So this is what interfaces with the home theater on the other side of the room right there. Below the AVR, I've got the ZimaQ Pro, and then at the lowest part of it, I've got my UPS. That's pretty much my new and upgraded 42U server rack and media center. So I've also got a little bit of an extension on this side. Like I said during the video, I added my router on this side of the room to a tiered rack that I've got there. Then I've got like a sort of a control center here, a keyboard, mouse, and a display. So these are supposed to work with the mini PC to kind of create a seamless experience and allow me to troubleshoot issues if I do experience them in here. So I can connect the monitor to any device on here. So my Apple TV, PS5, Xbox, whatever it is I need to troubleshoot, I can do with this monitor right here. For the tiered rack, I'm also using that as storage for a bunch of random items, as well as all the drawers on this Husky bench. I like having this surface right here. Lastly, we've got the Ryobi cabinets wall mounted up there, which honestly has been great since I've had it. It works perfectly. I don't have a lot of space in here for my power tools. But yeah, that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it down in the comment section. I'll catch you guys in my next video. It's Tommy, and I'm out, y'all.